Hello, everyone, and welcome to season 2 of the Expand Your Experiences podcast. I'm your host, Rashawn Stevenson, and I don't even know where to start, honestly. I just feel super, super grateful at the fact that I've had so much support throughout the off season. I've had countless calls and countless people asking me, when was the next season going to be available? Um, and that was very encouraging for me. My number one goal for even starting the show was to be able to impact people and to be able to get the feedback that I'm actually impacting people has meant the world to me. When you're creating things, there's not always an immediate feedback loop. You create things from the heart, but you don't necessarily know if they resonate with people the way that you intend for them to be received by the world. And I don't necessarily make things for the approval of the world. I make things that I feel, if you're gonna spend your time listening, if you're gonna spend your attention on my show and my conversations, then I want them to be impactful. Which is one of the reasons why I took an off season in the first place. I wanted to take a step back, evaluate the things that I can, improve. But more importantly, really, how can I expand my own experiences? And, one of the ways that I felt the need to do that was to increase my capacity, to increase my impact capacity as a host, to increase my capacity as a listener, and just to increase my capacity in general. But what do I mean by increase my capacity? So let me give you an example. Let's just say you're 100-gallon container of water, right? Well, you can only fit 100 gallons of water in a 100-gallon container. So my goal was to increase my capacity from a 100-gallon container to a 200-gallon container. And I didn't quite know exactly how I wanted to do that, but I did know that I needed to take some time to connect with myself, connect with nature, and figure out how I was going to do so. So basically, if I wanted the things that I'm involved in or working on to grow, I knew I had to grow. And I thought back to this concept called the leadership lid, which was something that I read in a John Maxwell book a while ago. And there's a law. And one of the laws that he talks about in that book is leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. The higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on their potential. So I took that concept and remixed it a bit. So basically, I had to figure out a way to challenge myself, figure out what ways could I challenge myself, what could I sacrifice in order to grow. Now, when I started thinking about this, it was around October. I think it was maybe October 20th or something like that. And what I came up with was I enjoy having cocktails. I enjoy drinking beer. I enjoy drinking wine. Not in a gluttonous way, but I just enjoy, a nice glass of wine or nice beer, maybe on the weekend, sometimes with dinner. So I figured, what would be a good way to incorporate this into my sacrifice? So I decided that I was going to not drink from November 1st to January 1st. 2 months completely no drinking. Um, and the reason that I chose this, because I felt like it would be hard. I mean, it's not something that I've really done for a while. And I thought, I've done, small detoxes here and there, but I've never completely done like a 2 month detox at the hardest time of one of the hardest times of the year to do a non-alcohol detox. I mean, being that you have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas, and you have just all and those are really social time. Well, I learned that those were very social drinking times. But I decided to challenge myself in this way. I felt like the benefits would outweigh the challenge. And, and I had some assumptions prior to. I felt like, all right, well, if I don't drink, it would improve my sleep. Maybe it would improve my skin. Maybe it would improve my clarity on my thoughts. I didn't know because, again, it's not something that I've done for a sustained period of time. But anyway, those are things that I thought, and I felt like, all right, why not? But I want to first tell a story about what happened when I started this process. I was talking to two gentlemen that I work with, and I was telling them what this was in my thinking process too. I was like, "Hey, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go 2 months without drinking," and ironically, one of them laughed and was like, "Man, you can't do that." And when he said it, I was shocked kind of because I was wondering what made him think that I couldn't do it. I mean, we didn't even really know each other well enough for him to say what I could or what I couldn't do. Um, and then the other gentleman had said, "Well, yeah, but we're gonna have this celebration in December. Like, you're not even gonna have a drink with me." So in that moment, I realized, wow, like the challenge hasn't even started, and I'm already being challenged as to, whether I can do something or whether I couldn't do it. And it really didn't hit me till later on that day. I was running, and maybe a quarter into my run, I thought about this must be the right thing for me to do because off the bat, I'm automatically getting challenged as to my ability to be able to do it. So I knew then and there that that would be the right path for me. So I started to think about what are some fail-safe switches that I can incorporate in case that, I'm embarking on this journey to not have any alcohol. Like, what could I do in the event that I had the urge? And, if you've ever set a goal before, sometimes you set goals and you don't necessarily think all the way through them. And I wanted to set myself up for success. So I tried to think through as much of this process as possible. Basically, having a fail safe switch so that if things became difficult, I'll have some tools in my tool bag that will help me through those moments. I started thinking about situations when I usually would have a drink. I started thinking about how could I substitute that action with another action so that so it can become a routine and it can become a habit for me. But I knew I also had to have some conviction to this process. I had to figure out why I was doing it, what was the reasons that I was doing it, and I knew that they had to outweigh all the challenges that might take place in order for me to do so. Now, mind you, this is all in the name of increasing capacity. So that was my why, that was my what, and I felt like I had to give up something in order to gain something. In fact, let me share this quote. What you seek lies in front of you, as does what you fear. So going back to knowing that I had to have a strong why, what I seek was to grow, and what I feared was that growth and what that process would look like. And, of course, there's some doubt, but I knew that having tools in place and thinking through the process as much as I could would help mitigate some of that doubt. Another why was I wanted to create some momentum. Most people that part of the year, and that part of the year meaning the holiday season, is very tricky because it's one of those times a year where we tend to eat a bit much more. We spend a lot more money. It's just a time where we tend to let our hair down collectively and do a lot of uncharacteristic things that we don't necessarily do throughout the year. So I also thought that would be a good time to challenge myself because and give myself that momentum because most people wait until the the beginning of the new calendar year, and that's when people set New Year's resolutions and so forth. And I've done that in the past, of course, but this time I wanted to try something a bit different. So going into the year with a head of steam, 2 months worth of momentum, 2 months of setting a goal and accomplishing it, I felt what pushed me into the year with a ton of confidence. It pushed me to a point where I can produce um, the type of work that I want to produce, and I can be a version of myself that is the best version of myself. And momentum basically is defined as strength or force gained by motion or a series of events. And I had to set my own series of events, which is everything that I've talked about up until this point, in order to get that momentum. And based on that definition, I didn't want to wait to create momentum. I wanted to already have it and be ahead of the game with a full head of steam. But let me go back to the two gentlemen who told me I couldn't do it. And what I also learned about, setting goals is it's important to know who you're talking to. It's important to know that you can't necessarily share your goals with everyone. Everyone isn't going to understand. Everyone isn't going to support. Everyone isn't going to believe that you can do something that you say you're going to do. Uh, Partly because people usually will give you limitations, or they're setting your limitations based on theirs. So if you say you can do something and they don't feel like they can do it, or they've never challenged themselves, of course they're not going to think you can do it. Of course they're not going to believe you can do it. Um, so basically, it's a reflection of their limitations. And I told some other close friends, and it's funny because the first thing that they said was, "Hey, well, yeah, like, what's your reason for doing it? You can definitely do that." Like, now, especially knowing why you want to do it. So there was no doubt as to what I can do and what my goal was when I told it to the right people. So the lesson learned off the bat was just kind of just know who you're talking to, and just don't expect everyone to always be supportive of you and your goals, especially if they don't understand what it is that and it's not meant for them to understand. It's meant for you to do the things that you feel compelled to do, to do the things that you feel guided to do. I also learned that when set out on a journey, a lot of times you're going to get tested from the start. How many times have you ever went on planned a vacation, and as soon as the vacation started, there was something that happened that challenged you, but you overcame that challenge and you went on your vacation and you enjoyed yourself? Or, which most people I'm sure don't do this, but they allow that one bump in the road to throw off their whole thing. And, I was determined not to allow that to happen, but more so look at the situation as to, what, this is a confirmation on the path that I'm headed in the right direction. So now I want to go back to tools. Tools. So basically, one of the things that I did, I just removed all the alcohol from my space, which I didn't have very much. And the only things that I had remaining were like, I think I got this bottle of whiskey from like 1980. I wasn't going to drink that. And then I had a kind of special bottle of sake, but I knew that just having those wouldn't be an issue. And if I were to crack those open, that I actually had an issue. So I kind of kept them there for that. Basically, just removing the accessibility, at least until I was able to build up enough um, of a habit so that I can just kind of look at it and not even have any temptation whatsoever. And it wasn't necessarily that I was afraid that I couldn't do it, but again, knowing my why not set myself up as much on the front end as I could, and replacing those things with a variety of teas, a variety of juices and fruits and things like that, that could help me become my optimal self during that time. Some of the teas were more about relaxing, and some were just beneficial towards health. Teas like green tea, and I have a good access to that living here in Japan. Jasmine tea for the nighttime, and etc. Another important thing was that I had to minimize the frequency in which I went out to restaurants with friends. Um, at least for in the beginning. I was able to go through a period in the beginning where I just decided to just stay at home and not do very much. But after a couple weeks, I actually was able to go out with friends and not drink. Didn't even have a desire to drink after maybe like 16 or 17 days. And it was easy. So then I knew also that I was on the right path because as I did the process, I thought it would get harder, but it actually got easier. After about 7 days, I started to notice different things about myself. My sleep actually did improve. I had higher energy levels off of less sleep. I started to evaluate a little bit of what alcohol does to the body in terms of sleep. And again, this isn't about drinking, or this isn't necessarily about like um, alcohol per se. It's more about discipline. And throughout this process, I was able to come up with a term or an acronym, if you will, that kind of displays what I'm talking about. And that acronym is called DRY. Uh, I mean, pun intended. I mean, it obviously goes with alcohol, but you can apply DRY to anything. And DRY stands for discipline rewards you. I wrote this DRY, discipline rewards you, on my bathroom mirror. I actually put little tack marks on my bathroom mirror also to track the days that I had been without alcohol. So substitute the alcohol for anything that it is that you're doing, or anything it is that you want to try, or anything it is that you want to challenge yourself with, or sacrifice for a said period of time for your own growth. So this DRY method can be applied pretty much to anything, which is also why I decided to share this whole process, because after doing it, I realized that, well, this is helping me in a tremendous way. Why not share it? Why not document this process? I started to write about it every day. Um, all my situations that would come up, the struggles, the easy parts, my thought process, what my body felt like, all of these things I actually documented throughout the whole process. In fact, may as well say it now, but I actually have a document. It's not really an ebook, but there is a document that I'm willing to share with anyone who's interested. But in order to get that, just sign up for well, actually, you don't have to sign up for anything. Just send me an email and I'll shoot it to you. And hopefully, maybe you can get some value out of it as well. I think we can all agree that discipline can go a long way and can be very rewarding. So each day, when I would put those tally marks up there, I gain a bit more confidence. And it turned out to be fun once I saw those tally marks adding up. Before you know it, it was a habit, and the discipline rewards you method was working for me. Now let's talk about the scale and weight. I was able to just, maybe I think it was day 10, I weighed myself. And again, my goal wasn't to lose weight, but for someone who may be trying to lose weight, that could also be a tool, which is why I'm mentioning it now. Oh, another crazy thing, well, not really crazy, but another interesting thing was I typically don't remember my dreams. But throughout this process, I started to dream and have very vivid dreams and would remember them. So, I'm again, none of this I'm saying that you should do. None of this I'm suggesting for this result. I'm simply sharing my experience, and if it resonates, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But for me, I felt compelled to share these things because that's what expanding your experiences is all about. Now let's talk a little bit about habits. There are many theories out there about habits, but a common one is that it takes 21 days in order to form a habit. And after about day 17, I decided that I wanted to test this theory. Now, what I'm about to say might sound a little interesting, being that everything I said prior to this point was talking about me not drinking. So I, I didn't necessarily start this process with the intention to share. But as I start going into it, I was like, wow, this is interesting. And might be something that I feel like I would want to share. And going back to the quote of what you seek lies in front of you, as does what you fear, it was only right that I share. But anyway, after day 17, I was close to 21 days. So I decided on day 22 that I would drink. Now, that might be contrary to everything I just said. Again, I thought through this process and I thought, well, if I'm going to share, then I have to embed some type of failure in here because I know for sure that when I've set goals in the past, there have been days where I slipped. There have been days where I didn't have discipline and I failed at whatever goal that I was doing. So in this process, I wanted to embed some failure. I wanted to test myself also. I mean, this was a challenge. So let's see if this whole 21-day thing works. What about if I have it was going to be 60 days at first with no drinking, but then I decided it would be 59 because on day 22, I needed to throw in some failure and challenge. So on day 22, I had 2 beers. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 2 beers. And it was the ultimate test, mainly to see what I say what I've done in the past and say, oh, you know what? I failed at this. Let me just continue doing whatever I was doing. I already failed. So why don't I already failed. Or what I say, why don't I keep going? I mean, did I just build a habit? Did I break the habit on day 22? Or is it already an embedded habit? And luckily for me, it was already in an embedded habit. I had no desire to drink, and I did 2 because I was like, okay, 1 beer, but let's do 2. Would that push me into that space of non-discipline moving forward? Would that push me into this place of my mind and me doubting myself and being able to finish it? And luckily it didn't. I mean, from my experience now, it being a theory of 21 days causing a habit, I'd say it's true for me. But I'd also say that if you don't do something for 21 days and you happen to set a goal and you happen to not meet that goal and there's some type of failure that happens in between, you can still start and go again. It doesn't have to end your goal. It doesn't have to end your whatever it is that you're trying to use the drive method for. In fact, the reason that I thought about doing it, it was to already take that away from you, to take that excuse away from you and being able to say, well, if I fail, I have to stop. Well, no, you don't. Like I've already tested it and and you don't actually have to stop. You can stop if you want, but going back to the reason why I did it, I had to make the why so strong that no matter what, that I was going to see this thing through. What matters at the end of the day is that you keep going, and forward is always progress. And that's not an original quote from me, but forward is always progress is something that I hear one of my mentors often say. And no matter the speed, also on day 22, those 2 beers I still had no desire to drink after that. So the habit was already embedded. But I think even if I would have did that on day 18, I still would have, my why was strong enough to where could have easily went through the 60 days and not had beer or any type of alcohol. And as far as thinking this thing through in the beginning, I forgot to mention that I visualized the goal. I visualized the reward. I visualized what I would feel like to make better art, what I would feel like to have better understanding of myself, what I would feel like to have confidence going through the year, what I would feel like on January 1st after not drinking for 60 days, but after I called the audible 59 days. I visualized all that. I didn't necessarily visualize embedding that aspect, but I did visualize what I would feel like. And as the days got closer to my end date, I already felt what I felt like when I visualized this process, which ultimately gave me more confidence in the process and it made me want to set even more goals. But I didn't want to overwhelm myself. I didn't want to get too ahead of myself, and I wanted to see this thing through before I set any new goals. And I want to like reiterate here, when I say I visualize these things, I mean literally. I literally close my eyes. I imagine these moments. I needed to help my subconscious mind feel and know what this was like. That was also a tool. That you can probably tell now, I put a whole lot of thought into this process, but I just wanted to map it out as much as possible and give myself a fighting chance, since there is going to be somewhat of a new challenge for me. An example that I heard that always stuck with me was when people don't become champions on accident. People don't just wake up one day and become a champion. They don't wake up one day and win the Super Bowl. They don't wake up one day and win a Stanley Cup. They don't wake up one day and just become an MVP. They know that that's what they want. They have an idea and they take an action and they make a plan for it. So essentially, this was my whole plan to be able to come out to make the best art that I can make. So now you might be thinking, all right, well, that's what you were doing for those 2 months. Sounds intriguing, but there's still 2 months after that. And one of the things is that I really there were so many takeaways from that whole process. And again, there are more details in the document, or like I said, I don't really want to call it an ebook, but for the sake of this conversation, let's call it an ebook. But there are so many things. There are so many other little details that I've documented in there. So if you want all the nitty gritty and all of that stuff, all you got to do is hit me up and let me know, and I'll shoot it to you, just in case there's something that you would like to apply what I now call the dry method to. But I just learned many things from this process. And the big one was that I can do anything I put my mind to. I think I knew that already. Well, I'm not going to say I knew that. I felt that, but that's not something that you can know and it always sticks with you. That's something that you have to actually put to practice. You have to constantly do things in order to build up that confidence muscle. It's just like any other muscle. Well, you can be strong one day. You could have built up to have these muscles and this strength, but if you don't use it, it eventually goes away. So that level of confidence, I think it requires a constant level of building. But the crazy part is that's still not the biggest lesson that I learned. The biggest lesson that I would say that I walked away from this whole experience with was knowing that once you increase your capacity, the contents in which for example, that 100 gallons of water, once you go from 100 to 200, it doesn't automatically turn into 200 gallons of water. It's just a 200 gallon capacity, which means that you then have to grow even more to fill up the capacity that you've now grown to. I hope that's not confusing, but essentially, your growth doesn't automatically take place just because you increase your capacity. Your capacity grows, but the contents in which is in that capacity doesn't automatically grow, meaning I had to learn more. I had to read more. I had to connect with myself even more just to fill up that space, which has been what the other 2 months has now been. My goal was to, around January's time frame, to start recording again. But once I increased that capacity and realized that I needed to now fill that content, fill that space, then I had to go to work with that too. And I had to give myself some grace. Sure, again, that was my goal at first, to release shows at the top of the calendar year, but it just didn't work out like that. And to me, it's not about rushing. It's about putting out the best quality that I can. And in order for me to do that, I had to be the best version of myself and the most full version of myself that I could. So going back to that leadership lid that I mentioned earlier, if your lid or your limit has increased, the contents within the container don't automatically increase. You have to intentionally increase. You have to intentionally put the work into yourself in order to grow. Which brings me to my next point of what season 2 is all about. It's all about growth. I've taken my time and I've taken I've been very, very intentional up until this point, even in season one, but even more intentional about the type of conversations and the type of content that I will be bringing to you. And I am so excited about season two. Uh, Hopefully, you can see that growth. Hopefully, it reflects within the conversations that I'll be bringing to you. And and I also said that I had a special announcement at the conclusion of season one, and that special announcement is that I'm going to be releasing a photo album book. More details to come. I kind of want to dedicate a special episode just for that because it's such a big project that I'm excited about and also nervous about because it means so much to me. But we'll get back to that. But right now, I've put together a little sound bite. I'm testing out my engineering skills, but I put together a little sound bite just to kind of give you a preview for season two. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Make sure that you connect with me on social, connect with me on my website, thirdeyepixels.com. And make sure that you are expanding your experiences. Enjoy this soundbite put together by moi.
Branding myself without even knowing. But the reason why, I spent so much time on branding, because without even knowing, I honestly was discovering what I wanted to do with my life, which was filmmaking.
And everybody has that mentality, and it's that legacy mindset, which means I have to give my all to right now.
I think it's mindset. That plays a big part in it. Like we would always touch on, like you said, the self-help books. And I'm a big believer in everything happening for a reason when it's supposed to happen. So when stuff like that does happen, I'm always thinking, okay, like I'm always asking the question, what was the reason this happened? I don't always get the answer right then and there, but later on down the line, it definitely reveals itself why that instance happened.
The things that I show on my Instagram, I like to bring awareness and knowledge. It's not to be fear, but it's to make you prepared. So even if you believe in scriptures and the Bible or whatever what have you, and you understand that there's a testament time in every single indigenous population or every society has been ended since the beginning of time.